Hi there, Dave here with a video about debugging. And the project that we're going to take a look at is our Better Crafty game engine. And we're going to learn how to walk through the code, and hopefully we'll learn about objects as well as how to debug. So I've gone ahead and gone to the website already and downloaded this guy here and unzipped him, put him inside of here, and then we're going to go ahead and fire this guy off in Firefox because that's where we're going to debug him. And so Chrome also has a good debugger, and there what it does is, well, it fires it off, and once again it gives us an alert, right, that we were in a knit, and now it tells us that we did in fact create two entities in the crafty game engine, and the engine is telling us that those are the two that got created. And so let's go ahead and take a look at all of the code. Well, to do that, inside the browser, we're going to open up the developer side and go to debugger. Now, inside the debugger, we can see the code that we have available to us if we want, and that is the fake crafty game engine, because that's inside of the code that we can modify, right? That's close to us. And then we also have this guy. Now if we want to see the HTML, we can go over to the inspector here, and then we can take a look at the code. Right now the code is closed for the headings, so we can open that up and see that this is our code, sure enough, telling us that these three JavaScript files are going to be loaded first. Now when the jQuery file is loaded, it's going to produce a window object and some others that can be used by this guy or this guy. It's actually used by this guy. And after it's done that, then this guy is going to get loaded, and he's going to produce the crafty object, and that's the actual game that we're going to use. And then this guy is loaded, and when he's loaded, he has an on load event that he's written code for. And because jQuery built the interaction to the web page, whenever the web page is loaded, that code inside of there is going to get fired. So let's go ahead and break this into two logical pieces, at least from my perspective. One is the creating of the crafty game engine itself, and the other is walking through the code that is the game. So if we want to get to that code, we go back to our debugger and then go ahead and walk through the code that's executed in the crafty engine. This is the crafty engine, the fake one. So everything that's not a function would be what gets executed. Well, there's all functions until the very last line is not a function, and that says do this. So it says crafty is equal to a new better crafty Dave. Well, that's going to fire the code up here, this Dave entity. It's going to make one of these guys. Oops, excuse me, it's not. It's not going to make one of those guys. It's going to make the better crafty Dave right here. Up at the top of the code is the stuff that's going to get fired when we make a game element. Down here is the actual game. So this is the code that's going to get fired. Well, let's watch it. So in order to make that happen, what we do is we put a little dot right there. And all I did was I left clicked it. And as soon as you see that blue, that means that the code will stop there next time you fire it. And so let's go ahead and do that. Now it's going to fire before it ever gets to the init, right? It's going to fire that, and then it's going to execute this code right up here. Let's watch it. So I'm going to go ahead and fire it again. And there it is. This just turned green. And that means that this is the next line to be executed. And so let's go ahead and execute that next line. Well, this gives us our options. This says, well, just go ahead and fire this all off. Just resume. Just don't pay attention to the fact that you stopped it. This says, step over, which says, if by doing whatever it says on the right side of this equal side, if it means going into another piece of code, don't do that. Just stay in this code. Versus step in says, well, listen, if the code on the right side of the equal sign, or the code that's going to get executed, does in fact call some other piece of code, step into that other code. And this one says, well, if you're in a piece of code that got stepped into by somebody else, step out. And that's it. So we do want to step in because we want to step in and see this code. So I'm going to say step in. And now it goes to the next executable instruction, which is inside right here. And that says, make me something called a init. And it's actually going to be equal to crafty_init. Now, I'm not going to tell you what crafty_init is until it actually runs, but it'll be something. And so it says that 4 times, so we can watch it run. Now, I can hit step. If I either step over or step in is going to do the same thing because there is no in. There's not. This is the bottom of the chain. So if I say step in, it's not going to step in anywhere. It's going to stay here. Now if I step in one more time, it's actually going to step out. But that's okay. It'll step out. It knows what you mean. Now it says, okay. Now we're going to go back. Now see, the green is back here, saying that in fact it's done everything on the right side of the equal sign. It is now about to assign the address and memory to the crafty object. And I'm going to do one more step. And there, that's been done. And if we went over here, we could take a look at the fact that the object does in fact have all those attributes. There's ways to look up everything. So let's stop this and let's walk through the next piece of code. Well, let's just run the rest of this. There we go. There's init, method complete, and there's the rest of it up there. It's just a little garbled to see because our window is so small. All right. So now we're not going to fire this code. What we're going to do is we're going to fire all the other code that's inside of here. And all that is, well, let's just walk through crafty init. We know that the crafty engine was created, and we know that it has the init method because we said it was actually crafty_init. So let's see how that whole thing all works up and how it hooks up. And so we're going to put our little dot on line 2. And then we're going to fire it again, and this time it's going to stop here so we can walk through the code. So we'll go ahead and refresh it, and there we go. There's our green. So let's walk into the craft. It's going to be crafty_init because we said, right? Okay, let's walk in. So we're going to step in, and there we go. We're inside of crafty init. Because we said init is actually crafty init, and now we're executing crafty init, and now, see, didn't know what that was until now. There's our alert. And so now it's going to go ahead, if we say step in, it's going to go ahead and fire that alert. There's our alert right there. And now we're done with that, and so we're going to step in again one more time, and we're going to go back out again. And now we're saying we're done with the crafty init. We're on to the execution of the next line of code. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go down. So we're going to say, well, I don't care. Stay in. Go deep as you can. So there we go. The next line of code is where we make this crafty player 1. And player 1, the crafty object that we made earlier, is in fact, we're going to show you, we're going to remember it. So what we're going to do is we're going to fire the crafty E method. Does it have a method called E? Yeah, it does, right? Let's go look at the crafty. There's the method E, right? It was called crafty E. So let's go watch it execute. And so we go ahead and step in. And so there it is. It's going over to crafty E. And crafty E makes a new entity object, which means that we're going to go back to the code that was in our crafty engine. We're going to execute that code. So we're going to make a new Dave entity. So we're going to execute the method, the function called Dave entity, and pass in comp names. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch that process happen. And so we're going to step in, and there we are. Remember, this is the part that's right above where the game engine is. There's the game engine down here that we ran through in the previous get-go. And here, we're doing the same kind of thing. We're just saying, okay, here is this. Eval is called eval, and I'm setting that up now. And I'm going to set up other things that I might want to set up at some point, but right now I'm just making them null. So there's an attribute called eval, or there's something called eval. We'll set it up later, but someplace down there you'll see an eval. Okay, let's go. So, what's it doing? Well, look, what is eval? Here's eval. Eval is being passed in. So this .eval is remembering the value of eval that's being passed in the first parameter. In fact, if we put our thing over here, we can see the value of, there it is, 2D canvas color 4-way. That's the first one that we're making, right? Yeah. So we can go ahead and walk into this code. No, these are just being set up, right? So that they have something called these values. And so when we make the entity, we want to set up all of the properties, at least establish that they exist. So we're establishing that these exist. And then we're also going to establish that the methods for establishing these values are also going to exist at least at some point. So therefore, we say that something called ATTR is going to be set to EATTR, and that will be defined later. Oh, there it is, right down here. So it's a method. So these guys up here are holding values that are set by these methods. These are the methods that are going to be used to set these values so that they can be remembered for the individual instances of the objects, the entities that we're going to be creating. Player 1 and player 2. So let's watch it run. Bang, bang. This .toString is equal to E2string. Notice how we can have the same name method to the outside world. It can just be a different internal name. It has to have a different unique internal name. But notice that the toString function of this guy, there's also a toString function of the crafty guy. Now his toString is going to be pointing, there's his toString. His toString is going to be pointing to the crafty toString, where this guy's toString is going to be pointing to the E2string, to the entity's toString. And then these other guys underneath here are the methods that are going to be used to set these attributes. And we can watch them fire. And so there we go. There's where now we've got we've executed crafty E. Now we're going to be running these attributes through, well, just watch the code. So now we're going to be running through the attributes. Okay. So we just executed the attr function, and we're about ready to return this. Now this says that I'm returning the element, the entity. I'm returning the whole entity, and the fact that I'm returning the whole entity allows me then to run the color. So the whole entity's dot color is going to be set to blue. And so we'll go ahead and fire that guy, and there's the color being set to blue and the whole entity being returned again, so that in fact we can now execute the for way. And now we're done with player 1. And over here we can see that player 1 is in fact an object. So player 2 object is going to be the same code. So I'm going to take this away from here, and I'm going to stop it right here. And I'm going to go ahead and let it run up to that point. So I'm just going to say resume, and there it is stopped now. I'm about to execute the toString method of the crafty object. And remember, that was the method that went into the crafty object and got its guys out of that array. Okay. So at this point, when we look over here, we can see that we have player 1. We also have player 2. There's player 2. There's player 1 was up higher. There's player 2. And notice that his color is, and there's his 4-way is 4.